The sharp buzz of the airport intercom echoed through Gate B-27 at Dallas Love Field, slicing through the tense air like a knife. Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 672 to San Diego has been delayed. Further updates will follow. A collective groan rippled through the crowd. Typical airline nonsense, a man in a baseball cap muttered as he shifted in his plastic chair, arms crossed in annoyance. A woman beside him huffed, tapping impatient fingers against her phone. It's like they forget our time matters. Some of us have lives to live, you know. Across the gate, passengers grumbled, glanced at their watches, and shot irritated looks toward the unmanned service counter. Parents juggled restless toddlers. Business travelers typed furiously on laptops. And in the middle of it all stood one woman in a navy blue flight attendant uniform, her posture calm, her expression unreadable, Michaela Green. When boarding was finally announced, a tired but pointed murmur surged through the crowd like a wave. People shuffled forward with rolling bags and sharp tongues, some throwing dirty looks at the staff scanning tickets as if the delay had been a personal insult. The tension didn't just fill the room, it pulsed through it. Michaela stood at the entrance to the plane, smiling gently as she welcomed each passenger. "Good evening, sir. Welcome aboard, ma'am." Her voice was warm, calm, practiced. But she wasn't blind to the way some passengers refused to meet her gaze, or the faint smirks that followed their half-hearted greetings. One man barely acknowledged her, brushing past with a grunt. A woman in heels gave her a once-over, then whispered to her seatmate just loud enough. "Why is she acting like she runs the place?" The man chuckled. "Probably just started last week. Trying a little too hard." Michaela heard it all. And she said nothing. Not because she didn't care, but because she knew something they didn't. As the plane filled, Michaela moved methodically through the narrow aisles, assisting with carry-ons and calming frazzled passengers. She redirected a man who tried to cram a full-sized suitcase into the overhead bin and gently calmed a child crying over a broken headphone jack. Her presence was precise, practiced, and yet, oddly commanding for someone in a flight attendant's uniform. But that confidence seemed to irritate a certain few. "She thinks she's a manager or something," scoffed a woman in row 12, rolling her eyes. The delay had shortened everyone's tempers, but some passengers weren't just angry, they were looking for someone to blame. And Michaela, with her calm demeanor and quiet authority, became the target. She moved on, unfazed. Because Michaela wasn't on this flight just to pour sodas and smile through insults. She was there for a reason. As the aircraft finally began taxiing, the cabin buzzed with passive-aggressive muttering. "Is there even a real pilot up there?" one man sneered. "I swear, this airline's a joke." Michaela said nothing as she made the final safety checks. Her silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. She took her position near the front and braced herself for what she knew would be a long flight. Because the storm wasn't over, it had only just begun. 30 minutes into the flight, Michaela maneuvered the beverage cart down the aisle, offering drinks with the same gentle smile she'd worn at the gate. Most passengers took their sodas or coffee without a word, some with a grunt. But not all. A sharply dressed man in row 14 lifted his empty plastic cup high, waving it like a flag. "Excuse me. No sparkling water?" "I'm terribly sorry, sir. We may have more in the galley, I'll check right away." He snorted. "Apologies don't fix bad service. What kind of operation are you running?" Behind him, someone muttered, "Bet she got hired for diversity, not skill." And from 2 rows back, "Honestly, it's like they don't even screen people anymore." The words should have stung. Years ago, they might have. But now? Now, they were just data. Michaela bit the inside of her cheek, not in frustration, but calculation. She was taking mental notes. Watching. Listening. Measuring the unfiltered truth of her customers' behavior when they thought no one important was watching. But she was. At the rear of the cabin, Her colleague Susan gave her a worried look. "You holding up okay?" Michaela nodded, voice even. "Just a tough crowd." Susan sighed. "Tough doesn't even begin to cover it." "I've handled worse," Michaela said. "Let's just finish the flight." But worse was still coming. 2 hours in, the turbulence hit. A sudden drop sent trays rattling and passengers clutching armrests. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calmly asking everyone to remain seated. Michaela did another sweep to ensure seatbelts were fastened. But as she passed row 14 again, the man from earlier snapped. "Seriously? You people can't even avoid turbulence? What kind of amateur airline is this? Turbulence is normal, sir. The pilots are doing their best to." "Oh, give me a break. Don't act like you're an expert." Another voice chimed in from the back. Maybe if she stopped playing boss and did her job, this wouldn't be such a mess. That's when Michaela stopped walking. She turned, hands folded in front of her. Her voice was calm. "Thank you for your feedback." Then she kept walking. But the moment was a turning point. Because now she wasn't just logging complaints. She was preparing for something. When the plane finally touched down in San Diego, the seatbelt sign hadn't even turned off before passengers leapt to their feet, grabbing luggage and grumbling their way down the aisle. The man from row 14 passed Michaela without a glance, muttering, "Worst flight I've ever had." "You should be ashamed." Michaela said nothing. But she followed him with her eyes. Waiting. 10 minutes later, the baggage carousel spun slowly as passengers gathered in clumps, still irritated, still loud. And then, Michaela appeared. Still in uniform. Still calm. But something had changed. She stepped into the middle of the crowd and raised her voice, not loud, but clear, commanding. "Excuse me, everyone." The room stilled. "I want to thank you all for flying with us today. I know this flight wasn't ideal. We had delays, turbulence, and, yes, some frustration." She paused. Her voice softened slightly. "But before you go, there's something I need to share." Eyes turned. Conversation stopped. "My name is Michaela Green. And I wasn't just your flight attendant today." A long breath. "I'm also the CEO of this airline." Gasps. Audible and sharp. Even the baggage carousel seemed to slow. "I began my career as a flight attendant, just like this, and I promised myself that even as a CEO, I'd return to the cabin to stay connected. Not with titles. Not with press. But by serving. Watching. Listening." Her eyes swept across the room, across the stunned faces. The blushing cheeks. The lowered gazes. "Some of you taught me a lot today, about kindness, about patience, and also about how people treat others when they think no one important is watching." The man from row 14 stared at the ground. A woman nearby suddenly looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Michaela's tone never wavered. "I want to thank the few who smiled, who said thank you. And I also want to thank those who didn't, because you reminded me why empathy, respect, and human decency still matter in customer service." On both sides. A few people clapped. Some just stood there, silent, ashamed. Michaela offered one last nod. "Safe travels." And with that, she walked away. Not with arrogance. But with grace. Leaving behind a stunned crowd, and a lesson they wouldn't soon forget, the silence lingered long after Michaela walked out of the terminal. A teenage girl who had whispered snide remarks earlier now stood frozen, her phone still in her hand. She had recorded part of the final speech, intending to mock it later. But now, her thumb hovered over the delete button. She pressed it. Nearby, the sharply dressed man from row 14 rubbed his face, red with embarrassment. He turned to his assistant, who had laughed along with his complaints just hours earlier. I was rude, he muttered. To the CEO of the company. God. His assistant didn't reply. She was too busy texting her sister, "You won't believe what just happened." In a corner, a young mom who had struggled with her toddler earlier wiped away quiet tears. She hadn't said anything unkind during the flight, but she hadn't said anything supportive either. And now, she realized just how much Michaela had done to keep the flight calm, safe, and human. She whispered to herself, "She saw us. And we didn't see her." Outside the airport, the warm San Diego breeze brushed against Michaela's face as she stepped into the back seat of a waiting car. Her assistant, James, sat beside her, looking stunned. "You sure know how to make an entrance," he said with a nervous laugh. Michaela glanced out the window at the terminal behind them. "That wasn't an entrance," she replied quietly. "It was a mirror." James turned to her, confused. She continued, "People reveal who they are when they think no one's watching. I don't just want to run a company. I want to build a culture that sees people, not just passengers or employees, but people." James nodded slowly, his voice softening. "You think any of them will change?" Michaela smiled faintly. "Maybe not all of them. But someone will." A pause. "And that's where change begins." A few days later. Michaela sat in her office on the 38th floor of the airline's headquarters. The skyline stretched endlessly behind her. But her eyes weren't on the city. They were on an envelope. No return address. She opened it slowly. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "Ms. Green. I owe you an apology. You didn't deserve the way we treated you. I've been thinking about everything you said. I showed my 10-year-old daughter the video. We had a long talk about respect, assumptions, and grace. Thank you for reminding us who we should be, even when we forget." Asterisk. No signature. Just a drawing from a child, stick figures, a plane in the sky, and a smiling woman in a flight attendant's uniform with a crown drawn above her head. Michaela smiled, blinking back tears. She placed the note in her desk drawer, beside a photograph of her mother, also in uniform, smiling from decades ago. Final words on screen. You never know whose life you're changing, until they choose to change it themselves. The passengers sit in quiet disbelief, still trying to process everything they've just learned. Michaela, having stood her ground, faces the group one last time. She speaks calmly, but her words hold weight, resonating with each person in the room. Michaela, CEO, calmly. "None of you expected this. You assumed because I was a flight attendant, I had no power. No authority. You thought I was just a face you could ignore. But in reality, I'm the one who controls the entire operation here." She lets the silence hang in the air, letting her words sink in. The passengers, still absorbing the shock, glance at each other, some apologizing without saying a word. Michaela stands tall, eyes focused, her professionalism unshaken. Michaela, CEO, with authority. Leadership doesn't come from a title, nor does it come from power. It comes from how we treat those around us. It comes from how we respond when no one is watching. And that, my friends, is something I expect from all of you, no matter what role you hold or who you think you are. Reflection and change, a new perspective. The flight resumes its course, and the passengers begin to reflect on Michaela's words. They start to realize the deep impact of their previous assumptions. As the cabin lights dim, one by one, they begin to approach Michaela, some with embarrassed smiles, others with genuine apologies. Passenger 1, with a sheepish smile. I didn't know who you were. I'm sorry for how I treated you." Passenger 2, nodding in agreement. "Yeah, same here. I misjudged you. It won't happen again." Michaela smiles softly but doesn't say anything, leaving them to work through their feelings. Her mission has already been accomplished. She has made them reflect on their own biases, their treatment of others, and the impact of their assumptions. The passengers leave the flight not only humbled but transformed, carrying with them a reminder that humility is the true mark of leadership. Closing thoughts, Michaela's leadership legacy. As the flight lands, Michaela is the last person to disembark. She walks past the passengers, who are now looking at her with new eyes, some nodding in acknowledgement. They now see her for who she really is, not just as an employee, but as a leader, a person who has taught them a lesson about true authority and respect. Outside, as Michaela walks toward her awaiting car, she glances at the sky. She reflects on the long journey she's had, from being underestimated in her earlier years to now. She knows this moment won't be the last time she's judged based on her title, but she also knows it won't be the last time she changes someone's perspective. Michaela, thinking to herself, voiceover. True leadership is not about titles or power. It's about how you carry yourself, how you treat others, and how you inspire change through actions, not words. Epilogue, The Ripple Effect. Months later, a news segment airs, focusing on the viral story of Michaela Green, the flight attendant turned CEO, who made a massive impact by challenging assumptions and leading with grace. The story circulates, becoming an inspiration to countless individuals who are fighting their own battles with prejudice and bias. The camera cuts to a brief montage, passengers returning home, reflecting on the flight and how it changed them. A new wave of respect and understanding washes over them as they continue their lives, forever altered by one flight, one woman, and one powerful lesson. Leadership isn't just about being in charge. It's about the impact you have on others, the difference you make, and the humility you show along the way. Michaela Green's story is a reminder that sometimes, the quietest voices speak the loudest. Final scene. Michaela's reflection. Michaela sits at her desk in the CEO's office, looking out at the city skyline. She's no longer just the head of the airline, she's a symbol of the change she wishes to see in the world. As the camera slowly pulls back, Michaela's voiceover echoes one final thought. Michaela, softly. We all have a role to play in shaping the world we live in. Don't let others define you by what they see. Show them who you are, not with your title, but with your actions. The screen fades to black, the message lingering. Several weeks after the flight, Michaela is seated in a corporate boardroom, surrounded by executives. The atmosphere is tense as discussions about the future direction of the airline unfold. The air is thick with the weight of corporate decision-making. Michaela listens intently, her demeanor calm yet authoritative. Board Member 1, anxious. The numbers are up, but we're facing intense competition. We need a bold move, something that'll capture attention. Michaela, CEO, thoughtfully. Maybe it's time we lead differently. Let's start by focusing on our employees, the ones who make the company run. If we lead with respect, with dignity, we'll see the kind of growth that goes beyond just profits. The room grows silent as Michaela's words resonate. One by one, the executives begin to nod, considering her point. Board Member 2, reluctantly, but intrigued. You're talking about a shift in culture. You really think it's worth the risk? Michaela, CEO, confidently. Not just worth it. It's necessary. The real currency is trust. Trust between us and the people who work for us. Trust with our customers. When we get that right, everything else will follow. Cultural shift, a new policy announcement. Months later, Michaela steps up to a podium at a corporate press event, prepared to announce a groundbreaking new initiative. The media is abuzz, eager to learn about the airline's latest move. Michaela smiles calmly, her poise radiating confidence. Michaela, CEO, with conviction. Today marks a new chapter for this company. We're launching a company-wide initiative focused on empathy, respect, and leadership at every level. This will go beyond the bottom line. We're committed to fostering an environment where every person, every employee, every customer, feels valued. The cameras flash, capturing Michaela's words as they begin to make waves. The press conference is a success, and her message is clear: she's not just a business leader, she's a champion for cultural transformation. Michaela, CEO, continuing. We've seen the consequences of judging people based on assumptions. Today, we start breaking down those barriers, one conversation at a time. Our employees are not just workers, they are the heart of this company. Their voices matter. The ripple effect, community outreach. In a quiet neighborhood park, Michaela stands before a group of young professionals, speaking at a leadership seminar. The crowd is diverse: students, aspiring leaders, and community activists. She smiles as she shares her story, hoping to inspire the next generation of leaders. Michaela, CEO, with passion. Leadership isn't about having a fancy title. It's about how you show up every day. The choices you make when no one's watching. It's about humility. It's about recognizing your own biases and challenging them. Leadership starts with you. The audience listens intently, deeply moved by her words. Michaela's journey from a humble flight attendant to a powerful CEO is a testament to the power of authenticity and self-awareness. A transformative partnership, Michaela and the flight attendant team. Back at the airline's headquarters, Michaela is meeting with her flight attendants. The team has grown closer under her leadership, and they share stories of how her lessons have changed the way they approach their work and interact with passengers. Flight Attendant 1, with gratitude. Remember that passenger who called me rude when I was just trying to do my job? I stayed calm, just like you taught us. And instead of escalating the situation, I helped them get what they needed. That changed everything. Michaela, CEO, with a soft smile. You're all leaders in your own right. Never forget that. It's not the title that makes you powerful, it's the respect you show others, the care you give in every action. The flight attendants exchange smiles, empowered by Michaela's mentorship. They know that they're not just workers, they're the ones who set the tone for the entire experience, and with Michaela's guidance, they've become role models in their own right. Final words on screen. You never know whose life you're changing, until they choose to change it themselves. Thread of time. Like, share, subscribe.